All right. The first story is mine and also RFM's, because as I announced last week on the newscast, Cody, Wyoming residents, Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood, had their day in court, the Supreme Court. And there was an audio that was put out on February 11th at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 1 hour long. You couldn't record it. It was not going to be available later. So several of us, RFM and I included, just jumped on, riveted. I have to say it was a nail biter. Wouldn't you say, RFM?
It was very interesting. I hadn't been able to read the briefings or anything, but trying to pick up on what was going on from having spoken with you, the questions being asked, what the lawyers are saying. This is, of course, the Supreme Court of Wyoming.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
They haven't quite made it to the Supreme of the Supreme Courts. No, this is Wyoming, absolutely. But yeah, by nail biter, I just mean, yeah, I was barely hanging on. RFM was keeping me grounded. I was, just ranting and raving and, knowing more of the backstory than a lot of people. So it's true. He can show you the text thread. You were sending me all kinds of pictures.
I would never reveal something like that.
He was sending me pictures of kittens and doves and things to help me calm down. Anyway,
cats massaging cats.
Yeah. Exactly. It was good. So we're going to talk today. There were two really good articles that came out right after it happened. LDS Church admits that Cody official gave bad advice that led to the approval of the temple. This is one of the biggest takeaways from what happened. An attorney representing the LDS Church told the Wyoming Supreme Court on Tuesday that a city official gave bad advice that led to approving a controversial 101-foot steeple for the temple the church is trying to build there. So that's one of the articles we'll go through. And the second one is Supreme Court questions the planning and zoning process over the temple. And I have to say, I follow a lot of temples. Wyoming and that Cody area, they give a lot of good coverage to what's going on with the temple. I'm really impressed with the articles. They get them out right away. They've got their facts straight. So good for you, Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming news outlets. You're awesome. I wanted to very quickly just kind of explain the players, the names that you're going to be hearing as we go through this. I put together this little chart. So one of the people that you'll hear talked about is the Cody city planner. His name is Todd Stowell. He is LDS. The Cody city attorney, Scott Kolpicki, I think. I'm not exactly sure how to say it. He's not LDS, but he is like a contract attorney for the city. So it's both Todd's job and Scott's job to help instruct the Planning and Zoning Board on legalities of buildings that want to be built, talk to them about site plans, things like that, because that's their profession, right? The city planner and the attorney. So the Planning and Zoning Board, while they're the ones making the vote, they really are reliant on information from the city planner and the city attorney who are working for the city, and they are supposed to be supporting the city. I think that is a very key element here. We also will be hearing mentioned the attorney. This attorney is incredible. Deborah Wentland for the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods group. She's been there from the beginning, and she really knows her stuff. She's awesome. And a brand new attorney, didn't mean to do that we haven't seen before in this arena, and that is for the LDS Church, Bradley T. Cave. So he was the one representing the LDS Church. And those are
Rebecca,
the players. Yes.
At the top, the Cody City Planner,
yes.
Todd Stowell.
Yes.
He's a member of the church?
He is a member of the church. Yes, the entire time this was all going on, he was the second counselor in a bishopric in a ward there in Cody.
Are any of the other folks LDS?
On the Planning and Zoning Board, there was someone put on just prior to the temple being announced, a bishop, Matthew Moss. Now, he was released from being the bishop, January 30th, and on that same day, Todd Stowell was made the second counselor in that same ward. So there's been either a bishop or a counselor that's, an integral part of this process. Yeah. Let's go to our next slide. All right. So to kind of dig in here, says that two Wyoming Supreme Court justices questioned, and I think a lot of them questioned the process that the city of Cody's deliberations over the LDS temple during oral arguments on Tuesday. This is in front of the Wyoming Supreme Court. The court is hearing an appeal from the district court that Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods filed in September of 2024 after District Court Judge John Perry ruled against them and in the church's favor last August. Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods, POCN, we'll just call it that from now on, is fighting the construction of the temple in the state Supreme Court, appealing this decision made at the local district court that allowed the construction of the temple to proceed. POCN argues that the board made its decisions, this is the Planning and Zoning Board in the city of Cody, based on false information and conflicts of interest, which would be considered as evidence in their case to block the temple. The evidence that they have that they were able to obtain through the Freedom of Information Act was blocked at the district court level, meaning the district court said, nope, you can't enter any of that into anything. And POCN said, but wait, this shows a conflict of interest. And this shows, false information or just misleading information that the Planning and Zoning Board got, but they blocked it. So maybe RFM is going to weigh in quite a bit on this because he and I both listened to this little broadcast. Maybe you can explain to everybody what it means when there's a district court decision, and then what does it mean to appeal it like that? Kind of what's the process?
Well, what it means is, of course, if there was a lawsuit that was brought at the trial court level, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Different states, different levels have different names for what the trial court level is. So often it's easiest just to say the trial court level. That's where the action happens.
Okay.
That's not the appeal, obviously. That is what appeal is taken from to a higher court. And that's basically that. You had asked me a couple of other questions before the show, so I'll go ahead and address those now, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. Your expertise really needed here because this whole thing could be like a mini series. I'm not kidding.
I think it is. It's a whole channel full of mini series at this point. But what's going on here is that the trial court level judge, one of the parties, I'm sure it was the plaintiffs, come in and they want to admit into evidence these, what was it, emails, text messages, whatever it was.
Thousands of documents that they have painstakingly gone through, timelined, correlated, collated, thousands of documents that show what's going on behind the scenes. Yes.
So without having been there, the fact that they were not admitted by the trial court judge in evidence says that the trial court judge found that they were not relevant to the issue that the trial court judge was called upon to decide. Now, having said that, it could have been conceivable, of course, hindsight is 20/20, but it could be conceivable, certainly, that at the trial court level, an appeal might ensue, and you might want to have those documents as part of the record. Because, okay, let me back up a second. When you appeal, it is not a new trial. It's a very common misconception that you get a second trial on appeal. No. What you appeal is anything that you say was done that was wrong by the trial court or at the trial court level. And those things usually have to be objected to, and there's all sorts of things that happen. But the main thing is this, is that when you're on appeal, what you're saying is the trial court judge made a mistake, and because of that mistake, my client didn't get a fair trial or whatever it is, okay? So that's what an appeal is. An appeal, by its very definition, does not take new evidence. There is no new trial. There's no new hearing, okay? It's based only and exclusively on the evidence that was admitted below in the trial court level.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, because all along there have been these steps where the POCN has had to say, okay, we can test this. We can test this all the way up to the top.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I was just going to say 2020, it would be conceivable of not admitting it in evidence, but filing it with the court as an exhibit anyway, with all those documents in it. And, just making it clear to the judge, you're not trying to get around this. You're just trying to preserve the record for appeal. Because otherwise, what do you got to do? You're up here now at the Supreme Court. Now, maybe you got to go back down there and have those records put into the record as part of the record. So now it can go back up to the Wyoming Supreme Court.
Yeah. No, and I feel that's what happened. I feel that their attorney, the POCN attorney, was able to include some of these things that were in this discovery that the residents did, because the questions that the judges were asking were very interesting. Because of course the Preserve Our Cody neighborhood, their whole, just put it in very layman's terms, is that it was fishy what was happening with the P&Z board and the vote. There was something going on. It was not normal procedure. There were irregularities, and they're trying to point this out through this legal process. So the questions that the judges were asking in the Supreme Court, as we listened, knowing more of the backstory, made me believe that they had really very carefully read whatever was presented to them. And they were asking some great questions, some encouraging questions that the residents were being understood. And when I talked to the Cody residents group, they were like, yeah, we feel like we were heard by the questions that they were asked. Whether that will give them the result they want, at least they felt that the judges had done their due diligence in reading through the materials and understood it. So as we go on, it says, an attorney representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made a significant admission to the Wyoming Supreme Court on Tuesday, agreeing with some of the court justices and appellants that the town of Cody city attorney gave bad advice to the Planning and Zoning Board. See right here, this is what I'm talking about, irregularities. The residents are going, the Planning and Zoning got weird advice. How could they make a decision based on things that weren't correct, that they were told, that they trusted, right? They trusted somebody to be working for them. And they felt,
Rebecca,
yes.
I hear what you're saying. I just want to really be accurate here. But this is advice that was given from the Cody city's attorney, not the city planner.
No, not the city planner. The church, I doubt, would say that. But I'm going to show that, there's a lot of interesting things going on behind the scenes. But yes, this is the city attorney.
Not the Mormon.
No, he was not LDS. There may have been connections. I don't know. Anyway, so he gave bad advice to the Planning and Zoning Board, which may have led to inadvertently approving a 101-foot steeple for a new temple being built in the city. This is also, if I can put it in layman's terms, the Planning and Zoning Board didn't even realize they were voting on the steeple. This is what it all boils down to. This is the bad advice. And the church attorney came out and said, yeah, it's you guys, it's your town, it's your attorney. You guys messed it up. What does that have to do with us and what we're trying to build? So while it's an admission that there was something wrong with the process, it's still just kind of laying the responsibility at the feet of the city, I think.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah,
I've been an attorney for 35 years, and I haven't done a lot of the city stuff, okay? But I've just got to say, as a basic premise, I think that a 101-foot steeple in town should not be the result of a whoops.
Yeah. You and the POCN agree on that for sure. Yeah. It says it was bad advice from the attorney, said Brad Cave, attorney for the church. The remark relates to advice that Cody City Attorney Scott Kopacki gave to his P&Z board about delaying a decision on the question of the building's height and the most controversial and opposed aspect of the project, forget that part. So what they're saying is that when they went to vote, between information from the town planner and information from the town attorney, the people on the P&Z board thought that they were voting, yes, you can build a temple, and we will revisit the height later. We're not voting on the height. The height isn't part of it right now. Unfortunately, different rulings later from different courts show that they did vote on it. They did pass it, which is funny to me because they had two more meetings, the city and the church, where they were voting and discussing. So I don't even think the church realized that they had passed it. But this is all the confusion in the process and the irregularities that even the Supreme Court seemed to see and recognize in their questions. Didn't you get that sense, RFM? They were talking about confusion and just the P&Z board not having their eyes wide open, things like that, which is exactly what POCN is claiming.
Yes. And like I say, you can put all kind of legal words you want on it. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that when a city council gets together and they say they don't know what they're doing because they have wrong information or somebody's goofed it up or intentionally or not, and they end up passing something that they don't think they're passing, and they say, wait a second, we didn't pass that. And then they say, oh, yes, you did. That's crazy. How does that justify the 101-foot steeple? This is like MASH back when, what was it? Radar Riley and Colonel Blake. Remember? Colonel Blake back at the beginning.
Yep, the first Radar.
What Radar the clerk, right? He would always
Yep.
be sneaking into his pile of things to sign, the colonel's pile of things to
Yep.
sign, things that the colonel didn't know about because he didn't read anything. Radar's just having him sign it, and then he takes it and does whatever he wants with it. Are you saying that if Colonel Blake actually found out that Radar had done that, which to my knowledge he never did, but if he ever found out that he did that and went and said, no, that's not legitimate, that he wouldn't be right? Obviously he would be right, So that's why I'm not understanding why this is a difficult concept for anyone to get their head around.
Yep. And part of the documents that the residents have from their Freedom of Information do show the confusion through emails and text of the planning and zoning, which is why it's so important to them to try to somehow get that in front of a judge, because it's pretty clear when you read those. But I understand, as you say, RFM, that there are many reasons why a judge can't view certain things, and they can only rule on what they can see. I mean, we lay people have a hard time understanding that because we watch too many court TV, right? Where you can just stand up and say, Your Honor, I found a diary, and they're like, bring it forward. It doesn't work that way. I understand that now.
Yes. But I'm sorry, I have to go ahead and add that, yes, the church did come up with a reason to cover. What I said is a very simple, it's a whoops. How can that be a whoops? Okay, let's go back and make sure that when government is voting on things that they know what they're voting on, right? Yep. I mean, it just seems obvious. But the church, I remember during the hearing, was pointing the finger at the city council people and saying, well, they voted for it, and then they immediately got pushback from their citizens. So they wanted a do-over. And that it wasn't because it was a mistake. It was because they knew what they were doing and they just want to change it now.
Yep, that's true. I will show you later on that even the LDS member of the Planning and Zoning Board did not understand what he had voted for. So anyway, we'll move forward. This will be exciting. Okay. So a little more background. 2 years ago, when the project first emerged, this has been going on since not last summer, but the summer before last. Like I said, it could be its own little mini series. I know we all think Fairview right now and everything, but the OG was Cody, and there are just as many twists and turns about this. And Mormonish has been following it. If anybody's really bored or laid up in the hospital, they can go to our playlist on temples and watch probably like 80 hours of content on temples. All right. Hope no one's laid up in the hospital. So 2 years ago, when the project first emerged, Wentland, the lawyer, said the church proposed building a 101-foot quartz-lit temple in a rural residential zone. That zone doesn't allow churches except under a CUP. I'm sure by now all of you understand what that means, conditional use permit, and has a maximum of 30-foot building height. Again, deja vu. This is a beautiful area. I've stood there on the temple site, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Further, the lawyer says a CUP requires findings of fact that the project complies with the height limit, respects the character of the neighborhood, maintains consistency with the development, and protects the scenic views. So the same things you see in other cities. Cities have it set up. They can control what's being built there. At the beginning of the Planning and Zoning's June 15th meeting, and this happened like 2 weeks, I think, after they first got the notice of what was going to be built. It was very quick. You know how the church operates. There's a note sent out. You go to a public meeting. You're shown the rendering. You go, wait, what? And then very quickly it moves to a meeting. Things happen really fast. Of course, the church knows behind the scenes, what's coming, but the residents aren't aware, and they have to mobilize and move very quickly. So at the beginning of the June 15th meeting, with 5 of the 7 members present, okay, this is important. There are 7 members on the Planning and Zoning Board. Only 5 were there that day. The chairman, Rowley, told the board that 4 aye votes were needed to approve the item. So that would mean a majority of the 7, even though all 7 weren't there, they would need 4 votes. The lawyer's explaining this. When a motion to approve the site plan received 3 ayes, it failed. So there are 5 people there. It receives 3. It's a majority of who's sitting in the room, but it's not a majority of everybody on the planning and zoning. So the board also tabled action on a special exemption for the 101-foot tower, she added. It rejected the ambiguous interpretation of the rules by the former city planner, Todd Stowell. The board's distrust of Stowell was shown in the supplemental records, she added. So this is what we mean by confusing information. First, and again, just layman's term, there's a site plan, there's the CUP for the added 77-foot tower. And the city planners going back and forth saying, you know what, that doesn't really count. You don't count the 77 feet. We're just voting on that, the shorter part of the building. The church pulled back an application. It was so confusing. They correlated it with the town attorney. I don't even want to go into the details except for to say that planning and zoning did not understand that they were approving the tower. That is what the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood says. They did not understand that. They thought that they were just voting, yeah, you can build it, and we will come back and talk about everything later. And planning and zoning and Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood is saying that is because they were led to believe that by the city planner and the town attorney. So that's kind of where that confusion lies. So now we will, let's see.
And there was also an issue about whether the vote was valid.
And that's the thing. There's two votes. Yeah. There's two issues. Sorry. Exactly. Is that a valid vote? Because it's not a majority of 7. It's only a majority of 5. So the justices, when we listened to that hour-long broadcast, they kept talking about, yeah, it seems confusing. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts here. So I think they saw it too. So I think you kind of already covered this, RFM, a little bit. What were they appealing? And it says during the June 15th meeting, 5 of the 7 board members were in attendance. A motion was made to approve the site plan. 3 board members voted in favor, like explained. 1 voted against the motion and 1 abstained. The petition states that the board chair stated the motion failed, as we just talked about, with the understanding that the motion requires the 4 of the 7. So this is Cody residents saying, look, this failed. It failed just numerically, right? 4 out of the 7 did not vote aye. The church is requesting the judicial review of the board's decision to approve the site plan that the board chair failed. The court documents claim that an affirmative vote requires only the majority of the board in attendance, not the entire board, and that 3 of 5 is enough. So this is what they took to the district court. This is what they took to the district court. And the district court said, what, RFM?
The district court agreed with the church.
Yeah, the district court agreed with the church. Cody said no, and that's how we ended up at the Supreme Court. So that kind of explains the process and the thinking there. So lots of confusion. How many is a majority? What kind of information did they get from their trusted city planner and trusted attorney? And did they even understand what they were voting for? Because they didn't believe that they were voting for the height.
Is that guy still working for the city?
Who?
The Mormon.
We're going to get into that a little bit.
That's kind of a good segue, but you're not ready for it yet.
No. I have like 25 slides to go through. No,
I'm sorry. I prematurely segued.
We're getting there. It's okay. It happens to people. It's all right. So yes, the judge did uphold the city's approval of the Wyoming temple. And yep, I think we can go past this one because I think we've already discussed all this. Exactly. Okay. So what I want to talk about here is that their attorney says P&Z's decision wasn't finalized on June 15th, right? This is what the church is claiming. This is what the courts are claiming. You guys didn't know it, but you voted for it on the 15th. It's a done deal. I mean, what does that mean? It means they never had the chance even to negotiate on the lighting or the height. It was just approved as is. They had 2 other meetings, where they talked about it. Nobody knew it was approved, but the court said, yes, it was. And it says it didn't include the resolution of the height issue. The city attorney had okayed that omission. That's some of the bad advice. He goes, it's totally fine. You can vote on it. Doesn't matter. The height is just there. Just kind of ignore it. Further, the lawyer said the district court should have permitted supplemental records that would have shown the P&Z board's confusion about the process and also provided evidence of the city planner's conflict of interest. And here I have a stack here. I'm not kidding. This is like very realistic. They had thousands of records and they went through with spreadsheets, Excel sheets, and they timestamped things and they put things in order. These people are brilliant and incredible. So let me show you what I mean by confusion behind the scenes. Okay. So let's see. Let me get to the next. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is a text thread between former Bishop Matt Moss, who was on the Planning and Zoning Board, and Todd Stowell. This is the next morning after that meeting on the 15th. So Matt says, did we pass the height of the temple as part of the findings in the CUP last night? Okay, so he voted and he's asking the question, did we pass it? Right there, to me, that's an irregularity. And then he says, could everybody who voted, could they reverse that vote? Okay, again, wondering, How did we vote? What did we vote for? Can we reverse it? Then he continues and said, I asked Carson, I think he's the head of the planning and zoning, last night, if I could reverse my vote to yes on the tabling of your interpretation, meaning that the height is not included. And he said I couldn't. So it would be wrong for them to be able to do the same, they meaning the planning zoning board, if they think they made a mistake like I did, and I couldn't change my vote. So I interpret that to say he's asking Todd, so, I couldn't change my vote on something. Can the people who voted last night, who voted yes on the temple, can they change their vote if they're confused? So he's asking this question. So then Todd answers back very reassuringly. He says, Scott K., that's the attorney, will need to make that call. I think I had inspiration to realize it, and I take that to mean to realize it, meaning it had passed, as I was waking this morning, and then had just enough time to do the report which said it did indeed pass. When I had finished, I had goosebumps from feeling the Spirit. So I don't know. I'd like to get both of your reactions on that.
It sounds like he's bragging that this slipped through without anybody recognizing.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation. What do you think, RFM?
Treachery. Seek it out.
Treachery. Seek it out. That's exactly
This is
right.
treachery. Look, if you got a Mormon who happens to be the city planner, okay, and the temple comes to town, and things go normally or remotely normally with the process, okay, and it makes sense. But if you've got that Mormon who is in the city, who's the city planner and who's very involved in this, and then as part of his involvement, which I think you've said you have evidence of, and this may be part of it, as part of his involvement, there's confusion that is inserted into the process that one would not normally expect. Yeah, I have now shifted over to thinking that he is a traitor to the city who pays him and on which he ties to the church. The church isn't paying him to do this. He pays the church to do this and takes money from the people that he is being a traitor to and inserting this confusion in order to get what it is the church wants.
You should never be happy that the board with which you serve on got screwed.
That is such a great point. Yeah, and that's the problem with the inside guy, as I use that, because no one would assume that. The judges ask in every court that I've paid attention to, well, what monetary compensation could a man or a person who does this get? It's very hard to make people understand what would motivate somebody who was perhaps church broke. We've heard that word before. It's not monetary compensation usually. There are other things at play. It's very hard for lawyers to get that across. In fact, the Supreme Court of Wyoming said, I don't think there's anything, nefarious, or suspicious because in the conduct of Todd Stoll, because they don't understand what lengths somebody might go to, allegedly,
Yes.
to try to further the influences of the interests of what is the most important to them. So I'll show you some other examples of the confusion. And this is taken from an article called Cody Zoning Board Members Think Cody Officials Misled Them on the LDS Temple. And this is from a year ago. I mean, the Cody residents have tried to take this to court so many times and share with people what's going on. So it says a new court filing, this is back in 2023, reveals emails and text messages between Cody Planning Zoning Board members. So while this can't be admitted into court, this is very well documented in all the newspapers and the articles. Members show they thought the city attorney and planner deliberately misled the board into approving a controversial LDS temple plan. So this is what they say. It was Stoll's determination that the 77-foot steeple on top of the temple should not be counted toward its overall building height. Of course not. Counting the steeple, the temple is planned for 101 feet. So what Todd was telling them is that's not part of the height. Don't worry. Don't worry. That does not count. And he pulled in some weird international building code. Anyway, it's kind of complex. In the email, Richard, who resigned from the board in September after the temple discussions completed, also expressed frustration that he may have been given inaccurate legal advice about delaying a decision on the question of the building's height. So here's a somebody who voted, somebody who was on the board back then. And he says, yeah, the lawyer told us we could do it later. And that was not the case. It was apparently passed on that day, but he didn't know. If we inadvertently approved it because of legal counsel advice, I'm going to be pissed, Richard told Rowley. So these are emails between planning and zoning board members going, what the hell happened, right? Rowley agreed and added that he doesn't trust Stowell at all and can barely trust Kolpicki. So you got your board going, I think they're up to something, right? Richard then responded that he believes Kolpicki threw us under the bus by telling the board it could approve a conditional use permit and a height exemption as two separate measures. So again, they could vote, yeah, you can build it, and we'll talk about the height later. I believe that's what the Planning and Zoning Board believed. The video clearly states him saying we could build a temple, but not the steeple if we vote in favor of the CUP. So this is what the board believed they voted for. Thoughts on that? If any. Or we can move on. It just goes to show all the confusion behind the scenes. The board members are emailing and texting each other. They're emailing Todd saying, did we pass it? What happened?
Okay. I'll try and recover from my stupefaction over these facts. Because it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this.
Yeah,
okay. So you've got your lawyer for the city. Okay. City attorney. And the city is the client, and that's the city council who are the representatives. Okay. So yes, if your attorney gives you bad advice and you do something that you aren't allowed to do under the law, then it doesn't make it okay just because your attorney told you to do it. Okay. So if you can't do something under the law, you can't say, oh, it's okay because my attorney told me. Okay. Having said that,
I've heard that before somewhere. SEC is coming to mind. Seriously, how many lawyers are going to give us bad advice in all of these scenarios?
Always. This is a time-honored tradition. It's not like it's a new thing or a Mormon thing at all. Believe me, I learned that I earned a substantial amount of my retainer by taking bullets for my clients.
Yep.
I'm the one to blame. And I will blame myself voluntarily in front of a judge in order to try and shield my client. Now, don't lie to the judge, but I will throw myself out there, to be chewed on a bit so my client doesn't get mauled as bad.
I want to ask a question here, and feel free to put me off if you're going to cover this at some future moment. But if the city attorney gave bad advice and the city council still passes a thing thinking it's something else, the lawsuit appears to me then to be between the citizens and the city council.
Yes.
And no matter what comes of this, it seems like the LDS Church can't be punished for having a measure passed.
No, and this is what happens in all the cities. Eventually, the residents have to sue their city because of irregularities. The city backed down and wouldn't protect them anymore. This is why Fairview is so different and important. They have not backed down. This is the same scenario in Vegas, in Heber, in Cody. All the residents have had to now sue their city, and the church is now joined with the city in those suits. So it's LDS Church and city versus residents. This is what happens every time, except for Fairview. It does not happen there yet, which is why that's such an interesting and different case. So you're absolutely right.
I was going to say, on the other hand, having given that original principle, okay, it doesn't make something legal just because your attorney told you to do it.
Right.
But the other side of that is that in this situation where you are dealing with people who are in a city council who are elected representatives of the people, and they are trying to do what it is that the people have elected them to do, and then they do it, and then they find out that that's not what it was, of course, that's where it gets between them, I guess, and the people. But still, I just think that should be an exception. I don't know if it is under the law. Like I say, I haven't dealt with this area of the law. But it just seems like that should be weighed into the balance as well.
Right. And that's a problem, though, because then people could say, well, towns, when they see the residents don't like their decision, they can go back and say, I didn't understand. But I believe if you can show that there was some force misleading,
you have to have it in it.
Yes.
Ability to show contemporary evidence of confusion like you have.
Yeah. Well, and that's in all those thousands of documents that have never been allowed in yet. So that's the crux of the Cody neighbors here. I'll kind of speed through this rest to get to the end. So they talked about, the church lawyer said, oh, there were changes made. That's not true, because they didn't think they were voting on that. They weren't even negotiating. They didn't understand that that was the final vote. It was all over back in June, although it continued throughout the summer, and they didn't even start building finally after several courts, said, okay, you can do it. So the LDS received a building permit from the city in September of 2023, but they didn't begin preparing the site off of Skyline Drive until a year later because of all this, going through court. Several days after the POCN had filed its appeal to the Supreme Court. During the hour-long session, back to the session, Tuesday, the justices interrupted the lawyers' presentations with questions about building height, the staff report, the findings of fact, P&Z's role, conditional use permit, special exemptions, and site plans. They really asked some smart questions. I was encouraged by that. There was no confusion, the church's lawyer said, although there was a lot of back and forth. In the end, however, the P&G chairman, Carson Rowley, said the CUP for the temple was approved on a 4-1 vote at the June 15th meeting. He added that the board's later attempt to reconsider the issue of the building height was inappropriate. So that's what you're saying, RFM, too, that the church's stance is, it doesn't matter if they were confused. It doesn't matter if they made mistakes. They voted. That stands. And again, I don't know. I'm not a real estate lawyer. I don't know if you can prove that there was misinformation from inside. That has an effect on it. But this is the church's stance. It's not our fault that your lawyer misled you. Notice they're only mentioning the lawyer. The decision should stand. So that's kind of their point of view. And that's what they presented in front of the Supreme Court. Okay, so it goes on to say the city planner was zealous for his faith and should have recused himself, says the Cody residence lawyers. He never should have been in the position of having to choose between his job and his faith. She cited the city's conflict of interest rule that employees should avoid all evidence of impropriety, whether it is a direct or indirect conflict. The church's lawyer said the city planner was upfront about his membership in the church and upfront about the steps he took so other city employees would review his work. Okay, so the church is saying it doesn't matter that he's a second counselor in the bishopric. There's no conflict of interest. He is going to do his job. He's going to put the city's interests first, and he's going to put his religious convictions or what he hopes happens in terms of the church on the back burner. City first. So that's perhaps up to a court to decide too. Did he put his city first or did he put his religion first? Further, Stowell didn't receive or solicit anything, the church lawyer said. Again, it's so hard for people to understand that it's not about money. It's about an oath that was taken decades ago. It's not about anything that you might receive. It's called being church broke. Although,
and over and over and over again, we see examples. This isn't like unusual.
Yeah.
Mormons get this. Believe me, we get this. We have been trained, and I can list you examples, including Roger Clark, just so many different examples that we have covered of people who have risen to a certain level in whatever their career happens to be, very successful, looked up to by their community, who nevertheless bend and break their ethics within that community in service of the LDS church to which they belong.
No, and this is why temple watching is so important, because you see this here almost more than anywhere else. It's pretty incredible. It says, let's see. However, now this is interesting. The lawyer would bring this up because this came out in the Freedom of Information discovery. It says, however, he did get a job offer, Todd Stowell, an offer of a job in an email if his city position becomes uncomfortable, but he didn't respond. So I have this email here. It's also been covered in the paper. The email came from the person who donated the land. Bill or RFM, why don't you read that? It's a little small for me. This is an email.
Is that the highlighted part?
It's the highlighted part. Yep.
So Todd Stowell, this guy, the city planner, is he going to be the next face on Psych Word Radio?
Yeah, I don't have any idea, but this is the job offer that the attorney at the Supreme Court is talking about.
Okay, so on June 27th, 12 days after a lengthy public hearing about the temple before the P&Z board, Nielsen sent this text to Todd Stowell. Okay. Hey, Todd, I imagine you're bombarded with temple details and resistance. I just wanted to say thanks again for your work and give my apologies for how so many in the community act and what they say, which I mostly tune out and hope you do too. As a compliment and sincere comment, I want you to know that if your work has any fallout, you would be welcome as real estate manager or project manager on our team the next day. God bless, Glenn.
Yeah. So someone's looking out for their own, right? This is the person who donated the land, and he's following very closely what's happening, and he's seeing, that Todd is becoming vilified in Cody as people start to kind of understand what's happening. And so Todd Stowell did not answer that email at all. But I put that out there just to show you an example of there is no monetary compensation, but there's this sense that you'll be taken care of if you're doing the Lord's work, is kind of how I take it. So interestingly, in February, of that year, suddenly Todd resigns from his position in as the city planner. And he says, let it be clearly known that I've not been asked to resign, either directly or indirectly. Neither is my resignation due to the current litigation surrounding Cody, Wyoming Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He wrote in his letter of resignation, I simply desire to serve others in a different opportunity and to focus more on my family. So he resigns. That's kind of interesting. He's a very young person, he's, I think, early 50s. And
because he was being so much pilloried, and those people in Cody who don't understand the Mormon way were being mean to him. Now, I want to know, in that statement anywhere, does he say you won't have Todd Stowell to kick around anymore?
Oh, I don't know, but it must have been really difficult, honestly, for his family. And so he resigned. He left his post he was released from the bishopric in April. And then he left his post. And so, of course, the Cody neighborhood group was wondering what happened to him, and they were asking me, what would happen to somebody who left? Where will he go? What will he do? Well, the first thing that happened is a week before he resigned, his house was paid off, or he paid his house off, or somehow
whoa. Wait
no longer had a mortgage.
Okay, hold on. Are you saying that a week before he resigned, you just said he resigned his post in February?
Yes.
Of what? Last year?
2023.
Okay, so 2 years ago.
Yep.
Okay. So he resigns, and 1 week before he resigns, you've just gotten information that the mortgage on his house got paid off.
He paid it off. It was paid off. Let's just say that. Yep, it was paid off.
Do we know how much he owed on the house? Do we know how much the final payoff was?
There was a refi in 2020 of $165,000. So I do not know how much he would have paid between now and then. If he's like a normal person, like the rest of us, you're going to make a little dent in that, but not that much in 4 years.
Normally, it would still be over $100,000.
I would think so. I would think something like that.
Because you got a refi, so now you probably got another 20 to 30 years on it.
Exactly. So again, I don't know the details, but I know that Cody residents were just curious to see, he's gone, what possibly may be happening to him after the fact. And do you recognize what that is on the other part of the slide?
It's a missionary plaque.
He's on an LDS mission. That's right. He and his
when
wife.
You told me this, I thought,
you
mean they called him as a mission president? Well, we've seen that before, but then you corrected me.
No, he's just on a mission, serving in a mission in Africa. He and his wife, and they left in July, I think it says on the plaque, and they'll be back in July, I think. So
that's hiding them out on the Serengeti.
So if you go back to the previous slide, Rebecca, that comment there, I simply desire to serve others in a different opportunity and focus more on my family, is him telling without telling.
Mm-hmm.
It's him saying that I'm going to work for the people who sort of got the benefit of you guys getting screwed here. And then I'll just say too, it seems, I don't know how old he is, but it seems like
52, I think he's early 50s.
He falls into sort of, there was this new category with single men, but this is a couple.
Yeah, they're both serving in the mission office there.
Okay.
In the finances.
I think it's in the financial department. Yeah. So anyway, very interesting.
I think the church is being very trusting, putting him in charge of finances.
I will let anybody draw whatever, conclusion.
It doesn't look good. It could be innocent. It could be innocent, but
innocent. Yep.
It doesn't look good though.
Yep.
And you see, it
dirty.
started June 2024 on the plaque.
Oh, that's right. He started the mission this last year. That's right.
Okay. And it goes through.
Yep. And he'll be out for another 2 years. Yeah.
It's 2 years because he's not the mission president.
Right. And I will just say, from the eyes of Cody residents who don't know, they don't understand the church vote like we do. They're kind of like, what does this mean? His mortgage is paid off and now he's working for the church. I had to explain that you don't get paid. However, there are ways for people to pay for a missionary. And so they're confused there exactly what is happening and why he is now so closely aligned with the church, after leaving his position. So they don't know. They don't know what it means or what it may have meant as far as his involvement before with the planning and zoning. So
I think that we can look forward to an illustrious career from Elder D. Todd Stowell, because he's got to become a GA at least, because now he's got dirt on the church and they can't afford to let him go.
Yeah, it's like witness protection, right? If somebody does something or sees something, you have to take care of them sometimes. So I don't know. It's very interesting. So I just, for those of you that don't understand what being church broke means, I don't think you can ever see this too much. And I know we're going long here, but these are very short. This is an elected senator of the United States of America, Gordon Smith.
Oh, from Oregon.
From Oregon. Yep. I'm just saying that it's not a town level. It's not
it's United States Senator.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. He addressed a group, the general authorities. The apostles. Yeah. This was from Mormon Leaks. And he kind of talks about where his allegiance lies. So maybe we can watch that for just a second.
Yeah. And I just want to note to folks, I'm working with one monitor tonight. So there will be a little bit of a transition whenever we play a video tonight, and so bear with me. First off, if you guys will say out loud whether you can hear it, because I won't be able to see either one of you. So if you can just say you do get sound, that'd be great.
And I think this first clip is the man who is introducing him to the Q15 and explaining who this senator is.
The liaison between the church and the senator's office.
Yes, exactly. So he's explaining who this man is.
And of greatest importance
sound
to this council today and in this sanctuary. I stand as a witness of his tireless advocacy for the vital interest of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For in my experience, he always stood ready first and foremost as a high priest and as a covenant member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint, and receptive and able and willing to serve its most vital interest in Washington and, in fact, internationally.
Remember which way you face.
Though I can't remember any Latter-day Saints that were permanent members of his staff, it was fair to say that his staff in the Senate was church broke. In fact, not many months ago, his legislative director called me on the phone and he said, "Ralph, you haven't called us for 6 weeks. What are we supposed to be doing?"
So this is a U.S. Senator's office calling the Q15 and asking, what do we do? What would you like us to do?
We haven't heard from you in several weeks. We need our marching orders. It's amazing. And you know what struck me this time hearing this? This should never stop being played, by the way.
That's why I played it again. I know we've all heard it, but maybe there are some that haven't. And, we're talking about a local level, perhaps. Here's a national level. This was brought up when Mitt Romney was running for president. They said, does he have a higher allegiance than the oath of office?
And the answer is yes.
And things like this make you realize you can't help but have it if you are, LDS perhaps. So anyway, 2 really short little clips to just, and this is Senator Smith himself.
This is the part that occurred to me this time. It's okay. You're doing great. This is important reporting you're doing. Don't worry about the time.
Yeah.
It's not just this senator who was church broke. It was all of his staff.
Yeah.
They're all Mormons. Okay. And they're all church broke. So he packs all of his staff. I mean, for U.S. Senator, I'm thinking that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
With good, faithful, devout Mormons, all of them church broke. But of course, the most concerning part is the senator is church broke.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the next one.
Yeah, these are very short. This is the senator himself.
Not much has changed in terms of the world in which you have to do the Lord's work. I would like to suggest to you, and not as any definitive authority, but what I regarded as my role as one who regards his temple recommend as more important than an election certificate.
I don't even think we have to comment on
important.
that. Yeah, he said that out loud.
I know. He's kissing the asses of all the apostles. And I'll tell you, here's the thing. Okay, first off, I do want to make clear it's Gordon Smith.
Yes.
He is, of course, a retired senator as of the time that he's speaking, but he's speaking about the time during which he was a senator.
Right. Yes, this was a decade and a half ago. So,
and the last thing I want to say is, my God, we are watching the apostles puppet mastering and pulling the strings of the United States government through a United States senator. And when the comment is made about, being church broke and staff being church broke and all this stuff, did you hear the laughter from the apostles? If nothing else, you should play it again for that, if that's possible, Bill. I don't know. But my gosh, how chilling. And I don't want to overemphasize this, but how does one overemphasize this?
And I'm happy to play it again. I want to note, this isn't a Utah politician. This is Idaho. Is that what this is?
Oregon.
Oregon. In Utah, while the break between Democrats and Republicans, no, I shouldn't say it that way. While the break between Mormons and non-Mormons is approximately 50-50, the politicians in Utah is 90% Mormon. If this is what goes on with a Mormon politician in Oregon, can you imagine how many Mormon politicians in Utah feel this way? Yeah. All right, let me play that one more time so that it makes the point that you're drawing out here.
The laughter.
Yeah.
Give me a second here. I got to add that to the screen.
Felt like it was in the ceiling room in the temple for a second.
It does look like that for a moment.
Not much has changed in terms of the world in which you have to do the Lord's work. I would like to suggest to you, and not as any definitive authority, but what I regarded as my role as one who regards his temple recommend as more important than an election certificate.
Yeah, I think the laughter was at the end of the first one, but that's fine. There was laughter when basically, I guess it was the other guy, the liaison, was saying how church broke all the staff were and how they would call up, if they hadn't heard from him in a few weeks. If a United States senator's staff had not heard from the church as to their marching orders as to what they should do within a few weeks, then they called the church and say, hey, what should we be doing?
Yeah, and then this last clip is an example of some of the things that an inside man can do. It may be a steeple, which is maybe fairly innocuous, but here's an example of what somebody could do for a different reason than one would think.
Could be a steeple, could be a war.
Could be a war, yeah.
I know and have been a critic of the Iraq War, but I also admit to you I voted for it because I felt the Lord's hand in it. I hope it works out, but I can promise you this: you'll never send missionaries to the Arab Street until the rule of law exists in Arabia. And it has taken root in Iraq. And ultimately, I think that if that succeeds, there will be an opportunity to begin building the church in the Middle East, which is...
Vote for the war so the church can get a foothold. I mean...
Did he just say he voted counter to his
Yes.
conscience because it
Yes.
was good for his religious institution, his faith?
Yes.
Yeah, he actually did.
Wow.
Now, obviously, politicians lie all the time
Yeah.
and say one thing to one group of people and a different thing to another group of people in order to ingratiate themselves with both groups of people, right?
That is true.
But still, wow.
Anyway, I just include that as an example because, the idea of the inside man, the alleged inside man, can have quite the impact, and there's different ways that happens. So, all right, I think I have one last slide. Oh my goodness.
And the other thing, Gordon Smith had
Wow.
no idea that this was all private, hush, hush.
Yep.
And this video was obtained somehow by Mormon leaks and then leaked
That's
some
exactly
years
right.
ago.
Yep,
So
that's it.
this is what he was saying when he believed that nobody else would hear him.
Yeah, he said the quiet things out loud.
That's it, exactly. So final thought here on the Supreme Court of Wyoming. It says Chief Justice Kate Fox remarked she felt that both parties were in a parallel universe, the church and the residents, when it came to their arguments. They both have a completely different interpretation of what happened, while expressing doubt that the members of the Planning and Zoning Board had their eyes wide open to the facts while making their decision. The justices will take the matter under advisement. So this is why I'm encouraged. It seems like they saw something, and they said it would be 2 to 4 months before there's a decision. I guess that's how long it takes.
Mhm.
But it was quite the interesting meeting. I wish it was available for people to listen to, but apparently they can't
Yeah,
save them. But
I don't
I
get
think
that.
covered it. I don't either. So just at the very last minute, this email came in to the group from Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood. And I just thought, in closing, I will read this. This is for somebody in Fruta who also has a temple being built in their neighborhood. And it says, I wanted you to know that they are putting the final touches on the new temple at Grand Junction, Colorado. The new temple sits on a raised hill area next to a major city entrance for all medical, college, and most business-related activities. It has over 50 parking street lights that almost blind you as you drive by at night. Add to that the multiple colored lights lighting up the white sides of the temple, and you have a nightmare. Lest we forget, they have put well over 1,000 water-thirsty plants every 24 inches from one end of the property to the other. Just letting you know what you can expect. Again, this is Colorado talking to Cody. Cody can forget their night sky views as the peons below look upward to God's glorious temple. That is a quote from my Mormon neighbor. My family has spent many nights in Cody while living in Lander and then visiting our son who lived there for many years. We truly feel sorry for you folks because of your new monstrosity will ruin much of what is great about Cody and Wyoming. So there it is, the Cody update. Whew.
Like I say, it's perfectly placed to be a billboard for the LDS church. It might as well have a big sign out front saying, our Masonic rituals are better than yours.
Can I just I'll add one little thing in closing to that whole story. When the Mormon on the city council says he's resigning without saying that he's going on a mission for his church, it comes across as if he's hiding that detail intentionally. And the only reason you hide that detail intentionally, or at least what it gives the appearance of, is that you've done something that you're trying to hide.
I think you would be right normally. If I understand the chronology, though, Bill, he resigned in February of 2023 and began his mission in June of 2024.
I think that's wrong. I think I'm wrong. Is Landon in the chat? Maybe he can clear that up. I think it was closer. He left like a few months later. So I think I'm wrong.
Yeah, the closer
maybe on the
those are,
resignation.
the more
Yeah,
problematic
no, it was
is,
close.
right?
It was just a few months later. Yeah, I think I'm wrong on the 23 or the 24, but it was house paid off. It was announcement. Then it was released from Bishop Rick. And then it was quit job. And then it was, or finish working. You know, he announced he was quitting and then finished working. And then a few months later, yes, it was February 24th. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, it was all very close. It happened very
it was
close.
February 24.
Yeah. So.
He is telling everybody, I'm stepping away. I'm going to go serve my people, my community, whatever. He does it in such a way that he doesn't want anybody to draw the connection that he's going on a church mission.
Right.
Again, if I was innocent, I would intentionally tell you I'm going on a mission for my church because I do not want the appearance of anything out of place. I'll tell you another thing that will show up that will sort of add evidence to this. you can bet your butt he's going to have his house up for sale, and they won't live in that home again when that mission's over.
I think that too. I think they're renting it now, but yeah, I think it'd be really hard to go back to the town. You know, and again, all this could be completely innocent and just looks step by step not great. I mean, everybody has had things like that happen where you're like, you don't understand. So, and I also think on some level, if somebody is that church broke and does those things, could they be viewed as a victim themselves? I mean, I know RFM, you disagree with me, but
Yes,
I think about that when I think about like my Mountain Meadows massacre ancestor who was maybe a victim in some ways of the dynamic there and did some horrible things.
I will agree with you
know.
that there were victims at Mountain Meadows, but your ancestor was not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt.